Hey everyone, it's your Peacekeeper coming at you with the next video in our How to Play series on the Russian destroyer line. This is the Tier 10 Khabarovsk class of destroyer leaders. The Khabarovsk class of destroyer leaders, best that I can tell, are based on a mashup of the Project 24 destroyer leader concept and the Project 47 destroyer leader concept. And browsing through the Russian version of Wikipedia and using Google Translate, as poor as that is, what I've gathered is that the ship was originally designed to be at the front of destroyer flotillas, basically leading them into combat, and the overall premise was to have enough armor on it that it could actually protect those destroyers against the light cruisers in that fleet. What they found out, though, was that basically they didn't have the capabilities to successfully produce these ships in any numbers, and the performance values would be basically that of a light cruiser but without the armor and armament, and only marginally comparable to their destroyers as well. At the end of it all, basically the Russians scrapped the idea since they really didn't have any need for it. The overarching concept was not a very good one, and by up-armoring it, they made it more expensive to produce, and they could only produce smaller numbers of them, and the armament just wasn't comparable to that of a true light cruiser, and the armor itself wasn't comparable to a true light cruiser, even though displacements were roughly the same. So there's a lot of compromises to make this ship into what it is as we see it in game. Now, that's no irony in the fact that the ships perform like a cruiser in this game because, well, quite honestly, that was kind of their original intended goal. The Russian Wikipedia page also makes mention of being inspired by, and I highly doubt it, there's not much in the way of inspiration here, the Atlantas, the U.S. Atlantic class light cruisers, which, as you guys know, have the much hated 5-inch 38 caliber guns, at least hated by those of us in the World of Warships community because they have the worst arcs in the game. But that ship overall is, very interesting to play, and it doesn't quite have the same speed as Khabarovsk does. Now, there's no service history to talk about because none of these ships were ever built or laid down or even really ordered because the project itself never got past the project phase. But we'll dive right on into the in-game playstyle. This ship is literally the epitome of the high-speed run-and-gun style of gameplay that we've come to expect from the high-tier and some of the low-tier Russian destroyers. With a top speed of 41.5 knots, and that's going to be with our speed flag, if I remember correctly. We'll take that guy off. With 43 knots without the speed flag, with the top speed that high, the ship is extremely difficult to hit by anything except for some of the most well-practiced players in the game. It does have very bad maneuverability and very poor concealment, but you've got 13.5 kilometers of main battery firing range, an insane rate of fire, 4 dual gun mounts. I mean, you've got literally 8 guns at your access here to engage ships at 13.5K. If you're sailing broadside to things in this and they're shooting at you, a quick wiggle of the rudder, especially at max range, and you're basically going to eat them alive. And even at the destroyer versus destroyer engagements, aside from being spotted so far out, you're really not giving up much to those other ships except for that aforementioned, turning circle and rudder shift. And your armor belt, and yes, this thing does have very good armor, is definitely going to keep most of the hard stuff out. Meaning, any AHE that gets shot at you by other destroyers is going to have to hit some very specific places to really do any damage. Those green areas, 50 millimeters, 50 millimeters, 50 millimeters, and the decks, 25, all the way around in those same green areas. Now, you're 19 millimeters basically everywhere else and less, but at the end of the day, the ship is still extremely well armored for a destroyer, Worse than a light cruiser, but no citadel. So the ship is very durable in that. And then on top of that, you throw in the fact that this thing can also pick up the repair party consumable to gain back hit point pool. It's a ridiculous concept overall. The ship is quite literally the most overpowered tier 10 destroyer in the game. It does consistent and reliable damage, especially if you're playing the ship with AFT on it. And, it's unbelievable that this ship managed to make it through all of the testing in its form that it's currently in. Well, I guess the Russian destroyers never truthfully had any testing outside of the lower tier stuff. The upper tier stuff never got tested quite nearly as much as we'd expect. Anyway, let's talk about some stats. 22,500 hit points, again, up to 50 millimeters of armor. That's just look at how much of the side of this profile is covered with 50 millimeter. I mean, it's pretty impressive. I'm not gonna lie. The ship has a lot of armor on it. Main battery consists of the 4 dual 130 millimeter B2U turrets. 13.5 kilometer range with AFT, 4-second reload time, a 10.3 second 180 degree turn time, 1900 HE shell damage, and 2600 AP shell damage, 900 meters per second shell velocity. Craziness. Torpedoes, this is one of the more recent nerfs that the ship received. We do still have the 2 quintuple or 5 torpedo tubes per mount torpedo tubes. However, they only go 6K. And they only have a 53 knot speed, and you have 0 other options. And, overall damage wise, 19,500 is great if you ever get to actually use them. The ship's detection range definitely hurts it a lot. So yes, you have 10 torpedoes, but they only go 6K and they're slow as heck. But when they get there, they pack a wallop. Anti-aircraft defense. This is one area in which these ships were supposed to be reasonably strong at, but I personally don't think so. If you're looking for an anti-aircraft destroyer, Gearing or Grozovoy are still your best bet. Although we'll talk about Grozovoy next week, and yeah. Anyway, so let's talk about the AA. We got 4 of the 12.7 millimeter machine guns, 2 dual 37 millimeter, I guess we can call them anti-aircraft cannons, I don't know. 4 quad 37 millimeters, and then we have the main batteries, which serve as dual purpose gun mounts, the 133 millimeter B2Us. Now, your AA with a AFT does go out to 6.2K, and then steps down from there to 4.2, and then down to 1.4 with the 12.7 millimeter. So overall, I mean, it has AA, and it probably deserves more respect than it gets. And I'm sure spec'd out in full AA build, it's not bad. But this ship is not an anti-aircraft destroyer. Not at all. So I wouldn't personally spec into AA. Maneuverability, 43 knot speed, 760 meter turning circle radius, which is garbage, and a 5.3 second rudder shift time, which is also garbage, and by the way, requires you to use both rudder shift modules to achieve. Concealment range by sea, 9.7 kilometers. Yeah, you heard that right. 9.7K. This thing gets spotted from space for a destroyer. And all of that is to balance out the fact that it has a ridiculous armament on it. Detection range by air of 4.9K, and now with the recent changes, we can see that we have a detection range after firing in smoke of 4.1K. Definitely a new number to keep in mind to try and balance, that out in your mind. Now, let's talk about ourselves some upgrades. In terms of upgrades, main armament mod 1 for the first slot for the 20% reduction in the chance of your main battery and torpedoes becoming incapacitated, increasing their hit point pool by 50%, and decreasing the time it takes to repair them if they get incapacitated by 20%. In the second slot, I'm running Aiming Systems Mod 1. This is to reduce that dispersion at max range. That's just going to help, bring that down by 7%. It's also going to increase the torpedo tube traverse speed by 20%. It's going to increase our secondary battery. Oh, it's not Kiev. We're not cool enough to have a secondary battery, so we don't really worry about that. If for whatever reason you were crazy and wanted to run this as an anti-aircraft destroyer, there's AA Guns Mod 2 for you. In the third slot, I am running Main Battery Mod 3 because, let's face it, that's really about the only thing that this ship is good at, is using its main battery. And that's going to decrease the time it takes to reload by 12%, and it's going to increase the traverse speed of the turret. And by increase, I mean it's going to make the turrets turn slower. So increase the time it takes to turn 180 degrees and slow down the overall traverse speed by 13%. Torpedo tubes mod 3, we don't really need to spec into it because our torpedoes are, well, let's just be honest, they're terrible. So no reason to run that. And again, here's your AA guns mod 3 if you're looking to turn this thing sillily into an anti-aircraft destroyer. In the fourth slot, I am running Propulsion Systems Mod 1, which is going to decrease the time it takes to, decrease the time it takes to repair your engines by 20% and decrease the chance of them becoming incapacitated by 20%. Honorable mention here to Steering Gears Mod 1, which is the same thing for your steering gears. This ship's rudder, yeah, it doesn't really matter. I mean, it's a destroyer. You're going to lose both at a fairly even rate. So pick whichever one you see is more detrimental to lose. For me, that's Propulsion Systems Mod 1. In the fifth slot here, I am running Steering Gears Mod 2 because this ship's lack of rudder shift time without both rudder shift modules makes this ship almost impossible to play. I'm sure there's somebody that's going to come tell me I can do it. Well, that's great for you. I've tried it. I hate the way it plays. It's like literally trying to steer a battleship that is the size of a destroyer. It has the worst rudder shift time. It's like 9 seconds or something ridiculous like that. It just takes way too long, and the ship doesn't have any real rudder authority at those, those shallow angles, so it takes forever for the ship to change directions like that. That's great if you can get used to that playstyle. I cannot. So Steering Gears Mod 2 is the one I recommend for a 20% reduction in rudder shift time. There's Propulsion Systems Mod 2 for the 50% reduction in the time it takes to reach full power when accelerating, and increasing your engine power when the ship starts moving. Again, that's going to be that -6 to 6 knot range only. In the last slot, I am running Steering Gears Mod 3 for the same reason I'm running Steering Gears Mod 2. The rudder shift time is garbage without it, but we also get the added benefit of reducing the time it takes to repair our rudder by 80%, and this makes up for the fact that I'm running Propulsion Systems Mod 1 in the fourth slot. Concealment Systems Mod 1, even in a full concealment build, this ship's concealment is absolutely terrible, so there's no real reason to run this except for to increase the dispersion of shots being fired at you by 5%. You can accomplish the similar thing with camouflages, or you can combine the two for extra resilience. Target Acquisition Systems Mod 1 doesn't really do us a whole lot aside from the 20% acquisition range of torpedoes is kind of useful. So, I mean, any of these are useful. It just kind of depends on how your play style is. Me personally, I'd much rather avoid the shots altogether than pray that the dispersion mechanics in this game don't allow me to get hit. So that's why I'm running Steering Gears Mod 3. Consumable-wise, again, similar discussion here involving the smoke party versus repair party as we had with Tashkent. I personally am much more comfortable with smoke than I am the repair party. Smoke just allows you to, at range, sit in your smoke and hit ships basically without any real recourse. I mean, sure, if they can get a radar cruiser close enough to you, it can be a real detriment. But this also has added benefits of, helping out your team as well. And that's, smoke generator. Also has the ability to help out your team as well, whereas the Repair Party 2 is more of a, I don't want to call it selfish, like that's a bad thing, but it's almost entirely focused on, healing back yourself. Doesn't really have any utility to the rest of the team. It's not real team focused. And I don't know, me personally, I think the smoke generator is the way to go, but to each their own. And of course, no other real special consumables to talk about. So with that in mind, let's go look at this ship in a battle video. Alright, so this battle is obviously going to be a tier 10 fight. The question is whether or not we actually have an aircraft carrier to worry about. If I remember correctly, no. And this is on the map Ocean, a rare game. No, this is not an old game, by the way. This is fairly recent. I don't remember the exact date, but it's less than a month old. So very, 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 very recent gameplay footage. And Map strategy on ocean is quite simple. You need to provide cover as often as you can for your friendlies while also simultaneously taking out the 8 million destroyers on the other team. In this case, there are 5 destroyers on the other team, and unfortunately, there's not really any cover to utilize, so we're going to have to make our own cover, and we are also not in a real strong position to... we're not in a real strong position to scout ahead, because, you know, 10K basically detection range. Yeah. I would have loved to have played this ship back before it got nerfed so heavily. I think it would have been just absolutely ridiculous, because it still is absolutely ridiculous. Now, on a map like this, with no cover really being in existence, it's very, very easy to, well, get spotted, for one, and then on top of that, you have the Khabarovsk, the tendency for people to focus down Khabarovsk just immediately upon sight. Like, yep, there's a Khabarovsk, we need to kill it, so we're going to go ahead and focus it down. Which means if you're not paying attention to ships and where they're at and what could possibly be shooting at you, it could be a very nasty surprise if you're not paying attention. Now we're making a beeline over here to A to see if maybe we can't hopefully cap it. You know, using our absolutely ridiculous speed, by the way, 48.7 knots currently. Did I mention that this ship has really good speed? Yeah. So we got ourselves a Prince Eugen, and as with typical, you know, destroyer shenanigans, basically we're going to sail as broadside as we possibly can. That way, if we do get hit, well, it's going to be as close to an overpen as possible. Plus, we're going to leverage our very, very large and healthy armor pool. Ooh, destroyer. We're going to go ahead and we're going to bail out of this because we just don't have enough support here to actually make use of it. But, well, we're going to lay this healthy smoke screen as well for our friendlies. Meanwhile, I don't know if that was Spectre in the Montana that just absolutely destroyed that Prince, or if it was someone else. But either way you look at it, you know, we're laying a smoke screen for the friendlies. We're doing our best to focus down the Z-46 as best we possibly can. You can see here, I think he's being radared, which is extremely useful. So now we just need to continue to aim, and we're going to take him out. You can see here, dodging shells like it's going out of style. Down goes the Z-46. Go ahead and get our repair going here. And we're going to try and loop ourselves back around here to either take advantage of the smoke. Nope, we're okay. We're going to go back around this way. There's a couple of different ways to play this. With that destroyer being out of this match already, we could, if we wanted to, go ahead and go back to our smoke, but we don't really need to. And you can see here, within 3 minutes of the game, we're already up to 26,000 damage. But I'm not done yet, as you can probably tell from the sound of my voice and the fact that I selected this battle video, right? So, as with all of the... Wow, we actually managed to get undetected somehow. Interesting. So now we have a Gearing that wants to play this game. Now, Gearing... The key to taking out Gearings and other U.S. destroyers in this ship is to remain at range. Those 5-inch 38s are extremely hard to use at longer ranges, and I'm talking like 8K plus. Meanwhile, your 900 meter per second railguns are just absolutely devastating. Look at how fast he is just dying. This ship really didn't need any shell damage buffs. Its rate of fire and its ability to absolutely destroy ships really wasn't worth the juice wasn't worth that squeeze. Down goes the Gearing. So now we've managed to take out a Gearing. Now it's on to focusing on this. Yeah, I don't know why I launched those torpedoes. I guess, I suppose, 6K torps, moving at, snail's pace, probably could do that. And look! That is a Friedrich der Grosse on fire twice. Ah, you repaired it. Mistake. And when you're in a battleship and you're dealing with the Khabarovsk shooting at you, my recommendation is quite simple. If you are incapable of, holding on to the repair party consumable until the absolute last minute with 3 fires going, especially if you don't have the, skills to actually buff the reload time on that, I would strongly encourage you to hold your damage control party until you have 3 fires when dealing with the Khabarovsk. If for no other reason than the fact that it will start you on fire just as fast as you thought. So there it is on fire again. We are up to 5 fires now in this game. And that was on the tail end of the ship, so we should be pretty good to start another one. And you just sit here and look, we're at 61,000 damage 5 minutes into this game. And, oop, slam on the brakes. Nope, gonna turn broadside to try and duck with speed. And look at that, next to no damage. I mean, that was totally a survivable hit. And this poor Friedrich de Grost isn't even gonna be able to continue to shoot at me because smoke. Yeah. We're just going to continue to rack up damage here, you know, 900 at a time without any real recourse. There's nothing he can do. All their destroyers are on the other side. There's our second fire, and down he goes. Now look, we've got ourselves additional targets to shoot at, like this North Carolina, and we have over a minute of smoke left with no destroyers in the area. Yeah, not a good sign for the enemy ships in this battle. So we're just going to continue to rack up damage. We're already up to and past the server average damage here. And just racking up more and more damage here. About 2,500 damage a salvo. Well, that was 1,500 damage. But you can see here the balance that is involved in using the smoke. We can sit here at our long range. We got 13.5K worth of range. Oh, somebody's in A. I think that's the North Carolina. Yeah, it is. So you can see here, we're just going to continue to rack up damage. We're already up to 95,000 damage, and we're still going. A quick switch to AP, if for no other reason than to just watch the salt and tears flow. It's still not really going down in damage at all, which is just comical to me. The ship is so utilitarian, especially at range. You know, it's impossible to effectively deal with the Khabarovsk without actually having, you know, a radar cruiser nearby or a destroyer that can get torpedoes off in smoke. But speaking of smoke, you know, we're on our last 17 seconds or so of it, so we're gonna bail out of this, and down goes North Carolina. And we're up to 113,000 damage. But wait, we're not done yet. Oh, man. This is one thing that I would also not recommend doing. If you're in a Yamato and sitting stationary, this ship was specifically designed to punish you. That was 1,700 damage, by the way, hitting the superstructure of a Yamato. And there's not really a whole lot he can really do to influence this match any. I mean, it's just he's gonna try and shoot, and he's gonna have to really be good at aiming in order to get that. He's not even gonna focus on me. Mistake. So we'll just continue to burn him down too. I mean, we're gonna take advantage as much as we can. We've got all 3 cap points, by the way, which is fantastic. We still have our friendly cruiser and, of course, our friendly Montana, and now this Yamato is exposing himself in ways that I would not recommend. Oh, taking some fire there from their Khabarovsk. Or maybe that was the Zhao. It could have been the Minotaur as well. The Minotaur? Is it a Minotaur? I don't remember if it was a Minotaur or not. It was a Royal Navy light cruiser. We're going to try and get ourselves up here and pop us some smoke. Yep, there's our smoke here for our friendly battleships. Yep, it is a Minotaur there in the smoke. And disappear. Much to the salt and begrudgingness of... Oh, and the game ended because they ran out of points. So we didn't quite get to finish this one out, but you can see just how quickly this ship just burns through. 9 minutes and about 30 seconds, 131,000 damage. Top of the team with 1,993 base XP. Detailed report, you can see 30,000 damage and fire, 1.3 million damage, potential damage. And there's our credits and XP screen. Anyway, Khabarovsk is one of my favorite destroyers in the game. It's just an absolute riot to play. It is very overpowered, though. I'm going to still admit that. But hey, anyway, I'm your Peacekeeper. Like, comment, subscribe, and thank you for watching.